Welcome to Rauta's vinyl reviews. This time we go to Finland with something special. First of all, let's start with the cover. I'll quickly unwrap this one. Obviously I opened it because for review purposes I had this vinyl for review, obviously. So what we have on the cover is kind of a peculiar fish with elk horns or something. This album is Ounas II, so obviously it's a successor to Ounas I, which came out 2 years prior to this one. Also had a fantasy cover, waterfalls and some interesting buildings. So now it seems we are underwater, right under the waterfalls or so. And then there are interesting details like what seems to be a shield or some other item, focusing on some runes and whatnot. But this one takes the focus. Look at it. Interesting fish having the elk horns, moose horns, whatever it is. This is a beautiful gatefold release, which brings us to the whole lineup here. Recording information and a beautiful painting here. And of course on the other side of the vinyl we have a track list. True Reaper Records, this is late August release. I got this part of the release date, but my review, due to the busy schedule and all, comes out a few days after the official release date. But give you a closer look on the vinyl. This is how the band lineup looks like. You will see some face paint, some hoods, and some fantastic magical powers, it seems. So if you're now taking notes on the more magical, fantastical details on this one, yeah, they do have a point here, because after all, this is a combination of rather fantastic genre, pun intended, called power metal with melodic death metal. And this is the black vinyl that comes within. So, very nice packaging once again by the label. Thank you to the label for sending this one. Like the previous time I got to review vinyl, and it's always special taking a VIP slot here. But now it's time to talk about music and give you a little bit background from the band before we do that. So 2005 started in a Laplandish part of Finland that is very, very up north. Basically where reindeers run and all that stuff. And the main city is Rovaniemi. By the way, the same city Beherit is coming from, or used to be coming from. So this started some 20 years ago. And now people would wonder, nobody heard of these guys 20 years ago. Well, that's exactly kind of a true, because the first demo came out 9 years after that, 2014. But then the band really picked up with the pace. Already Frost Realm, a very mediocre album, by the way, 2015. And another one 3 years later, and another one 5 years later. This is where I came back to the fold to review. Really didn't, like Frost Realm back in the days too much. It sounded like an over-length demo. Not bad, but very, very mediocrity. Now, fast forward a few years more, and you have this Ounas I, which is a whole different band. Now, very professional with their melodic death metal meeting power metal. Sounds weird if you think about it, but then again, there are other bands like Kalma, and maybe most importantly coming from Finland, Children of Bodom, which then again were really doing roughly more or less the same genre. So we jump to Ounas II, the fourth album by the very band, and now fourth album within 10 years. See the difference? From 9 years, only one demo, and the later 10 years, you have 4 albums out. So the band is really picking up the pace. Comes with some 7 tracks. Obviously, this is missing some track lengths here because the album is not out while I'm doing this. Actually, just one day before their... No, sorry, technically, just one day. Yeah, I was checking out if I'm taking a look at the wrong day. Just one day before this is out, and I think these track lengths will be included. But what is interesting when I mentioned Children of Bodom is that this indeed has a Children of Bodom cover. Now, I usually go against this idea that if you're a black metal band, for instance, and you do a black metal cover, there's nothing really to add up. You just basically end up copying the whole thing here. And same thing is when death metal does a death metal cover and so on. So how does Hatebreeder stand out from the band's music as a cover? Not really. It doesn't stand out. For me, or someone who is not that, familiar with the Children of Bodom, like a fan, probably won't even notice the difference. So it fits that well. That can be seen as a blessing or a curse. I won't comment it that much because I'm not really a Children of Bodom fan. Anyway, this is just to give you a little bit of understanding how the album looks like, what's included, and so forth. Technically speaking, Ounas II is very, very nicely produced album. I was about to say it sounds fantastic. Maybe that's a little bit far-fetched, but yeah, it really does have a good production. Everything is nicely mixed, and whether we're talking about individual, instruments like guitars or drums for that matter, everything is like very, very pro. There is not that much room to really improve from that, and then it goes to more like matters of taste than anything else. I mean, obviously we could always drop some Rammstein album or Metallica's Black Album and say this is the reference sound you're going for, but would those productions, the whole overall sound fit these kind of bands? Well, that's debatable. Musically, the band is very, very nicely balancing two different worlds, power metal and melodic death metal. Maybe in the bigger scope, like I have listed this, I would just call it melodic metal. Why so? Because first of all, when it comes to the power metal thing, you're obviously expecting certain kind of elements like clean vocals and certain kind of drumming, certain kind of guitaring, and that's not really what Suotana is doing. So sure, they do have the points or moments when it sounds like a little power metal in the mix, but calling it like power metal is definitely misleading, especially if you're coming from a power metal background and you're expecting them to sound like power metal, and you're like, it doesn't really remind me of those power metal bands I'm talking about. So yeah, calling it that, it's a bit of a stretch, but we'll manage. Then again, calling it purely just melodic death metal is a little bit misleading, but not as much as including power metal here, because they do have some unusual elements, some unusual features when we're talking about melodic death metal. I mean, if you compare this to, say, earlier days of Dark Tranquillity, In Flames, or any of those bands, or even Ounas II, well, this sounds different. For example, compared to Ounas II, there are no growly vocals, because it's more like black metallic vocals, so more on the screamier side of things than just, death metal crawling. And that's where it kind of goes, how do you call it death metal to begin with? It isn't exactly Hypocrisy or Ounas II. So once again, calling it melodic metal might be giving you a little bit of better understanding how I would box it, how I would define the genre for this given band. And for what it's worth, they're doing just fine. So are they, kind of successors to bands like Children of Bodom? In a way, maybe more than Warmen, which are more closer in connection to Children of Bodom. Is this gonna, appeal to the Children of Bodom fans? Well, I am too biased to answer that because I honestly don't know. But I'm assuming with bands like Kalmah and Children of Bodom are the kind of a similar ones. And by the way, I'm not just taking these claims out of my ass. Look at the similar artists, how people have voted. Kalmah being the number one being compared to. And once again, melodic death / power metal. Same for Norther, which is maybe a little bit different, but I guess goes for the same box. And then you have Winter Sun, which is a little bit different in my opinion, and then Children of Bodom, and down you go with the list. So these names where, melodic death metal and power metal are being put together, I would say, at least when it comes to top 4 of the bands, maybe apart from Winter Sun, yeah, it kind of holds true. So I would personally recommend, if you are a fan of Children of Bodom or Kalmah, I would definitely, suggest you to figure it out. Now, how does this compare to Ounas I is a difficult cookie to crack, because I think these are more like a brother and sister, or maybe just two brothers, I don't know. Gender is not really the defining thing here. What matters is that this is maybe too melodic, and because of the power metal elements, too happy sounding for a lot of black metal people, even if they're used to, more melodic kind of black metal. But they do have similarities, once again, the very same way as back in the Gothenburg 1990s days, melodic black metal or melodic death metal were not that separable. I mean, you have the tracks from Dissection to Dark Tranquillity to Children of Bodom, and the rest. But I'm not gonna nitpick here about genres. I'm merely pointing these out so that you can figure it out whether or not this is gonna be your cup of tea. So if you liked Ounas I, you are gonna like this one. And I think it works the other way around. If this is your first possibility to, get used to the band and listen to it, and you like it, it's pretty safe to go back in the discography and, check out the rest and you'll probably end up liking them too. I would say recommended for the fans of given genre, but obviously due to this hybrid nature of the music, it's definitely not for everybody. But I hope you will figure it out by yourself. Links are provided in the description box so you can check out the music. It's already out there, and then if you like it, go buy it. And as you can see, the vinyl version is pretty, so consider that if you're a vinyl collector, and if not, maybe streaming or CD is your cup of tea. Do what you will. Rauta out.